Yeah, ready to go.
Thank you very much, John. Right. Welcome to this meeting of the Resources, Fire and Rescue Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Pleasure to welcome you all here, and thanks for attending so close to Christmas. I've gone for a Christmas jumper. I thought it would set the tone a little bit. Right. So first of all, apologies. John, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, apologies from Councillor Jens, and Councillor Redford is present as a substitute.
Thank you very much, Wallace. Thank you very much for attending this afternoon.
Pleasure, Chairman.
Do we have any declarations of interest?
None that I received.
Okay. Chair's announcements. I have none to make this afternoon. Minutes of the previous meeting have been circulated. Is it the wish of the committee that they are adopted as a true record?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Right. Public question time. We've had no questions notified, have we, John?
That's correct. No questions.
Okay. Right. So it's questions to portfolio holders relevant to the scrutiny committee. I've not had any notified. Is there any questions that want to be asked now? Councillor Falk, Judy.
Thank you. It's a question for, or a comment and a question to Councillor Cole. We spent a lot of time on the heritage and cultural strategy and came up with what I think was a really, really good strategy. And we had lots of partners involved. Now I'm concerned so many of those partners will be struggling because of COVID. As we will to, not being able to open the museum, etc. During the lockdown. Can I ask if we're doing anything to help keep our strategy on target and help the partners?
Thanks for the question, Judy. Actually, this falls under Heather Tinn's portfolio. So I know there's still work being done in the background, certainly around whether we can continue to try and make museums safe in order to let visitors come and visit the museums. But certainly we'll pick up your point around partners, and also we'll pass on the information to Heather to pick up, and also officers. I'm not sure if Cashel Werner is online today, but maybe she could have answered some of the question. Actually, Rob's here, so he could certainly answer some of the questions too, Judy.
Okay.
Rob's kindly indicating that he wants to come in. Rob.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to point out that we've got an update on the implementation of the strategy due to come to your meeting in March. And so we'll be able to give some detail there, because it's it is a very germane question.
Thank you, and thank you, Cam, for all you've done for the libraries, because I think you worked extremely hard, and I think they're getting fed up of me clicking and collecting every 5 minutes. But it does mean that we can carry on reading, and it's just frustrating not being able to go in and choose my books this time. But that certainly has worked really well.
The Borough Box is doing really, really well. Thank you, Judy, for supporting it.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Judy. Thank you, Cam, and thank you, Rob. Nobody else is indicating that they have a question. So if that's the case, we'll move on to item 4, the work programme. It's on page 13 of your agenda. Is everybody happy with the work programme? Can we accept that? Not seeing any objections, so we'll take that as accepted. Right. If you want to go to page 15 of your paperwork, it's the council quarterly progress report and I think Kieran, I think you're presenting on this for us.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so this is the Q3 performance report. I'm sure many of you will be aware that we're endeavouring to do as much as we can to ensure improvement in many areas of our current performance, not least around attendance times, and that's directly related, of course, to availability, particularly for on-call. I certainly know that there's one councillor here that will know and love this as an ongoing feature of on call that was then retained. So Councillor Redford will know all about this, as of course does our portfolio holder. But we're certainly seeking to try and achieve improved availability, and also we've done some very good performance-related work on our risk profile. So we had a piece of work commissioned. It was in fact out of Rob Powell's portfolio that it supports the property work that we're doing by a company called ORH. And what they sought to do was look at the risk profile across the whole of the county and provide us with information at an optimised level of fire cover for the county, which is certainly one element. And then obviously the remainder really for us is understanding what incident types we're attending. And the biggest feature of that is around trying to prevent fires from occurring, fires and incidents occurring in the first place. Now, one of my assistant chief officers, Barnaby Briggs, he's head of service delivery, and it falls within his remit to drive performance in this area. So he was going to cover off any elements around the performance work we're doing, and certainly between us, I'm sure we can take all the questions you have. Barnaby, are you able to cover those areas of performance for us?
I am, Kieran. I'm struggling very slightly with my internet connection at the moment. So, if councillors have questions, I can certainly deal with questions. I'm just trying to bring up the relevant part. If I could possibly take it that way around.
Okay. Thank you, Barnaby. Well, item 8 this afternoon on internet connectivity is going to be interesting, isn't it? Because I'm in exactly the same boat. I've got Councillor Bode that's indicated she has a question. Sarah.
Yes, thank you. Just to be absolutely clear, we are dealing with agenda item 5 because obviously we've got a whole paper on fire coming up later on.
So the paper later on, Councillor, is the retrospective benchmarking against other services.
Yeah. Because I had some questions about fire, but I also had some questions about other things. So will I be able to get answers on other things as well?
But certainly we're happy to take any questions around fire.
Right. Do you know Councillor Warwick? I have questions about sickness absence, for example.
Okay, so we can certainly take questions on sickness absence now, Councillor. That would be appropriate.
Okay, that's absolutely fine.
I have no problem with it being raised now or later, whichever you prefer, Sarah.
Well, I think they are. I'm struggling a bit because my papers didn't arrive until about an hour ago, and so I've looked at all this stuff online, but now I'm actually looking at a paper, and of course it all looks very, very different. And a comment: I would love it if when we got stuff with lots of charts and colour. You look at it online and it's full of colour. It comes in the post, having been damaged and ended up in a plastic bag, and it's all black and white. And it does actually make it much harder in black and white. But the only way I could do this, if my papers hadn't arrived an hour ago, would have been to have 2 computers going, so I'm glad I haven't got that. But I think, for committee members, I think we could probably afford a few pennies extra per sheet to be able to send this stuff out in colour, because I do think it makes it much easier to actually understand. So if I get some of this wrong, you have to bear with me because I've not had a chance to look at the stuff. So some of this period covers since lockdown, is that right?
That's correct.
Yes,
that's correct. This is the period start of April, so this is all within COVID and certainly covers some.
So my question was, what difference do you think that has made? I mean, I was thinking about this. It's been a rather odd thing. Though we've been in lockdown, so that's meant that actually there are a lot more people at home and not travelling. So, but we've had some beautiful weather, both in the spring and then in the summer. And so people have been outside, and that potentially causes issues. So just really a very general question to start with. What effect do you think lockdown has had on your performance?
Okay, that's specific on sickness. It's a good question, guys, and you've already identified the nuancing factors of the weather and so on and so forth as well. Our performance generally has improved. I'd say we've had less absence. Obviously, although there was lockdown, fire and rescue operational staff kept reporting to their normal place of work. You'd appreciate that the lockdown didn't apply to us in exactly those terms.
Indeed.
Although what I suppose we did have, we had increased on-call availability both from furlough and from the effects of lockdown, people not being able to leave their homes as much. So I think generically we actually saw an improving sickness record with an occasional. We've only had 2 or 3. I hesitate to glorify them with the term outbreak, but let's go with that. 2 or 3 outbreaks of COVID on stations, which have been rapidly contained, and so far, touch wood, have just been held to 1 or 2 individuals on individual stations. So generally, we did not see what you might have anticipated. What a lovely day, let's have a barbecue sickness effect, if I can use that term.
Yeah. I think that's a really good way of putting it, Barnaby. And I think what we saw in the early stages of COVID, Councillor Bow, was that we saw a little bit of sickness and absence whilst we were still, all of us, trying to understand the nature of the COVID virus, and some of that was worried well, some of it was symptomatic issues that could have been COVID and equally could have been something else. What I would say is that throughout the main period of this pandemic, our staff have been incredible, and that's also understanding that they don't bring the virus into work, which is equally important. But majority of them are relatively young and fit individuals, and therefore they fared fairly well through the pandemic. What I want to do is draw attention to our on-call staff, who have been absolutely phenomenal, and their own sickness levels have been significantly low. And it's only been, as Barnaby mentioned, where we've had an actual confirmed outbreak in a unit, an on-call unit, where we've had to take action around the individuals there. But on-call staff in particular have been a significant boost in terms of our crewing and availability through this period.
Am I allowed another question as well? Yep. So then about the fire, the time of you arriving, the percentage. Now you might have thought this might have got improved because there was far less traffic around.
Yeah.
But it's gone down.
Yes, if I
or got worse. I get my figures, get my terms right now.
You're correct, as the figure that we're looking at on this report stands at just over 57%, whereas our target is 75% within 10 minutes. There's been a COVID effect in that there were less incidents or less of the serious incidents that would count towards this figure, and it's a little bit of a statistical anomaly, and I'm not trying to sow false complacency or assurance, but if we think in terms of the 75% figure being a geographical figure, in other words, we know that we can get to 75% of the county within 10 minutes. A large proportion is we've had a disproportionate number of the incidents that did occur, the low number of incidents that did occur, occurring outside of the areas that we would expect to get to within 10 minutes. So I don't wish to sound complacent, but it is as simple as that. Very recently, I'm conscious, as I say, that I might be reopening on wounds. I don't intend to. One of the incidents that makes up the 46 point whatever percent of this was about 50 metres away from the door of Tysoe Fire Station, which of course is no longer there. And a fairly obvious illustration of geographical travel distances and so on. What I think for assurance, what I would say is that I check. We get a daily brief every day, which I check and which my colleagues check, and we look for anything that stands out. So an incident that we would absolutely expect to have got to within the 10-minute target that we didn't, or something that simply doesn't look right, we do chase those down.
Yeah, okay. And my final comment would be about your social media. And I love. Sorry, Kieran.
No, not at all, Councillor Bow. No, you carry on.
I was going to say, I see your social media followers have gone up, and I follow. I don't know how many fire service accounts I follow on Facebook and Twitter. Huge numbers. And they're all, I think they're really, really good value. They're informative, they're attractive, and I think they show the service in a really, really good light. So I think that's really, really, really good news. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one further response on that, if I may. So doubt the sun and the moon, but never doubt Barnaby Briggs. However, we do have some really good data that evidences the positions that we have where incidents have occurred outside of our normal 10-minute response time. So I wouldn't ever want you to feel that it's just on our word. We have the data behind us with some really good mapping, and Barnaby's done some great work with our business intelligence teams. So we've now got 0.5 of a full-time establishment person in our continuous improvement and change team now from PMO, and they're doing some absolutely fantastic work with us in developing new performance criteria to get closer to the detail for you, give you that assurance. So we have got maps available. It will show clearly the indicators where we fully expect to reach that 10-minute standard, and then where we have this anomaly geographically that we know we will never achieve those standards. And it just depends on where the incidents fall as to where our performance lies in this sometimes.
Thank you, Kieran. Right, I've got 4 indicated speakers, 2 officers, 2 councillors. We'll go to the officers first, as they may wish to add something to this. So, Steve, you were first to indicate.
Thank you, Chair. And just to help out my fire colleagues here, the performance report that we're looking at, just to be clear, for no other reason, is general performance across the whole council. Whilst Councillor Bowes is naturally alighted on those things to alight on with regards to the fire service, but you've got the whole council here, which is just clear. And I'll probably give way at this point to, whilst that general point's accepted, and we've got various colleagues on the call who can cover any parts of the performance of the council as we go through this question Q&A. I'll just give way to Sarah, because I think Sarah's picking up the point about absence generally. So I'll pass over to Sarah, Chair, if you don't mind.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Steve.
Thanks, Chair. It was just a general observation, really, and pointing members. I think it's paragraph 2.4 of the report, which talks about the decrease that we've seen in sickness absence levels quite significantly over this period. And I think there's probably a number of factors that contribute to that. So I think, first of all, I think we suggested previously that those organisations that move to a more flexible way of working tend to see a reduction in their absence rates. And that's largely because, pushing our own principles around agile working, it's work is what you do, not where or when you do it. So more people are likely to do some work if they're feeling unwell at home, rather than actually coming to the office if they were feeling that same way. So actually you get kind of more return and less sickness absence in terms of the employee's working day. The second thing we've done is we've done a really sort of proactive push on managers closing down sickness absence in the system. So the system's only as good as the data that's in it and that gets reported. So we've been really trying to be very proactive with the managers and doing a sort of data cleanse and making sure that sickness absence is closed down on the systems in a very timely way. The third thing I think is about isolation. Obviously, before we had the IT kit and we were able to work remotely, those that had to isolate probably wouldn't have been able to work from home, but having the IT kit and having the facility, even in an isolation period, they're able to pick up their sort of kit and work remotely from home. And the last thing is probably relevant as well, and something that members have picked up on previously, it is around the support for staff and the support for their mental health and well-being, and supporting them working in a very different and remote environment and enabling them still to work, notwithstanding that the working environment has changed significantly. So those, I guess, were the main points that I just thought would be worth highlighting to members, all referenced in the report.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. That's really good of you. Thank you. Wallace, you've indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a question really on the problem, which is a traditional problem, of recruiting staff for the retained areas. Do we actually have a running database on local employers to contact, i.e. farmers? Because in particular in the rural areas, employers can be few and far between, and I would have thought it was important to try and make contact with what we've got.
So, yeah. Good question, Councillor. We We don't have a centralised database of employers for that purpose. Clearly, you'll be familiar with there's a number of centralised databases we do hold for protection purposes and so on. The contact with local businesses is left to local station managers and the on-call watch managers, retained sub-officers in as was. It is an absolutely valid point, because when we have a strong on-call unit, it almost generates its own recruit cadre because the contacts are there. And where we have a unit that's taken a hit for whatever reason, then what we have to do is to try to arrest the downward spiral. My particular focus at the moment is Shipston on Stour, where for a variety of reasons, a number of long-serving firefighters have left us, and we are now re-establishing that station from quite a low. Yes, we have a limited number of very keen individuals, and we're re-establishing, but it's a relatively low ebb at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Oz. Andy, have you got a comment on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just briefly, there's a couple of things. I'll start on the recruitment one that Councillor Redford raised, and we do recognise that awards evenings, the sacrifices that employers do in letting their staff come to work as firefighters in the retained parts of the county. So that's certainly helping. I think that's appreciated. I think one of them was Nick Bant's fire factor, who's local to Southam, again plugging my Southam station that we went to last week, and there's quite a few retained firefighters there. And it's strange when you go to the station, it's always cakes and biscuits, yet they're always so fit and active. So I don't know how they manage that, but Mr. Amos had more cakes than I did. I just mentioned that on that last one. So yeah, we are working to try and recruit retained firefighters, and appreciate what a great job they do. Just going back to Councillor Barrett's point about response times, obviously they are important, but on many occasions we've got there with especially the fires within the 10 minutes time, and we've been too late. So the prevention agenda is particularly strong at the moment. So FP are doing a great job, and have done even more so during COVID, found various vulnerable people. So whilst they are important, we will always appreciate that there will be some areas we won't be able to get to within 10 minutes. And sometimes even if we do get there within 10 minutes, we're too late. So it's all part of the prevention, protection and response ethos, mantra, whatever you want to use, that has been installed for a long while. So, and again, great jobs done by everybody, even more so during pressing times. And again, they've been part of the community and improved the mental health and well-being of many residents. So again, that's another added value of our great Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service.
Thank you, Andy. Okay. Judy Fowle.
Thank you. On page 18, it's got in the longer term, the service asset management plan sets out the intentions of to relocate. And I understand why you're doing it, but it talks of transport nodes. What exactly does a transport node consist of?
Sure. Can I go with that one, Kieran?
Okay.
Thank you. Try once again. So a transport node, in its simplest form, Councillor, would be road junctions. So, for example, if you take Rugby, which is our most developed thinking at the moment, Rugby Station, Corporation Street in the centre of Rugby was built before the Western Relief Road went around Rugby. So what we plan to do now is to effectively split the two pumps from Rugby, not very original names, but we'll go with Rugby South, Rugby North, put one at either end of the Western bypass. They can still run round the bypass and go into Rugby as they need to, but they're better placed to respond out to RTC road traffic collisions. One of the areas we know we can't get to the moment is along the M6, for example. Rugby South will be able to hit the M6 much more quickly. So whole time stations relocated onto transport nodes, big road junctions, and on-call stations holding their position in the centre of our rural or remote communities where, as with Councillor Redford's point, we need to be able to recruit and draw in from the local communities.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, Judy, just one additional point on that as well. This is about the integrated risk management plan, which is also trying to forecast growth and development in the county. So as much as we recognise there's an awful lot of new property being developed within Warwickshire, the property itself doesn't present significant risk to us. The people that reside within it do, particularly when they get out on the roads. And what we recognise with our risk profile is that we're seeing still a steady increase in road traffic collisions, and we're confident we're getting on top of and keeping on top of fires. So it's important we're on that major road arterial structure so we can get around the county quicker and improve those response times indeed, and also having a more equitable level of prevention, protection and response services across the county as well.
Thank you, Kieran. Right, the last indicated speaker is Councillor Riley. Dave. Dave, your hand's disappeared. Did you have a question or?
I do, Adrian. I'm just struggling with this system. Sorry. My question is about page 16.23. And if I'm honest with you, I'm finding the performance report incredibly difficult to understand anyway. There's so much information in there, and it's so confusingly laid out that it doesn't follow a narrative. But what I can see with the chart, which is listed as chart 1, there is a major fluctuation in terms of performance reporting, where there is no correlation between the quarters about targets being delivered and targets not being delivered. So I was just going to ask if either of the officers had an explanation as to why performance is so variable, because I'm surprised to see this variation over a quarter, which suggests there's no control over the performance measures.
If I may, I think correlation is a challenge, particularly when we have relatively low numbers. So I think getting trend lines and consistency in data is definitely one of the factors that we do have. And as I say, sometimes these anomalous factors also create significant spikes for us. So our mainstay is that we understand the causes of fires and many of the causes of road traffic collisions. I think we definitely understand our target audiences around fires. I think road traffic collisions is a slightly different thing, and we're seeking to get more information about who it is that's having the road traffic collisions within the county, and they may not be our residents, because clearly we have an awful lot of motorway that runs through the county, and this is why sometimes we don't compare terribly well with other fire and rescue services that haven't got the same kind of major road infrastructure within their counties. And that is a challenge, but working with the Safer Roads Partnership to try and get better data, working with Highways England, and then it might be we try and get more messaging out on our major roads rather than but in addition to the work we do with young people and other targeted groups within the county. Barney, is there anything else that you wanted to pick up on around the kind of the fluctuations of performance measures and targets?
I don't think so, Kieran. I think if I understand the council correctly, if he's looking at chart 1 on page 16, I think that might be performance across the county council rather than, I think that might be Sarah's point from earlier, rather than just fire and rescue. But otherwise, performance across fire, you're correct, Kieran. It links to the geographical distribution of the incidents, and particularly RTCs, and just the variation within those.
Okay, well, that chart is titled "Resources, Fire and Rescue." So you think it's as opposed to fire and rescue, it's specifically about the OSC.
I think, Dave, I think we've got two of the officers who are going to add something to this for us. I've got Steve and Rob both indicating, so whether they can enlighten us on this. Rob, do you want to come in first on that? Steve's dropped his hand.
Thank you, Chair. I think Steve may have been about to say similar things to me, but this is the suite of metrics that are reported to this Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So that's fire metrics and those relevant to the Resources Directorate. I would sort of give a bit of context as to the variation. We are in the middle of a global pandemic, and of course, when we set the targets, we weren't. And actually, when you look at some of the ones that we're not achieving in the narrative that we've provided, you'll see for things like the value of debt, we're missing that target because we are being very sensitive to some of our big providers in the marketplace, which is absolutely the correct thing for a county council to be doing in the circumstances that we're in. So I think the movement is a very kind of reasonable thing to see in the circumstances that we're we're in, because we've had to significantly reprioritise and redeploy our resources and change some of our ways of working to reflect the circumstances that we're in. So, we do keep a very, very close eye on it, obviously, and we would want to be hitting all targets all of the time, but there's a very real context to some of the movement that you see that does reflect the very unusual times that we are living through. The other point that I'd pick up with Councillor Riley is that I do think there's a lot of room for improvement with our performance framework, and members told us that with the task and finish groups, and work is underway to slim this down and produce a more sort of tiered performance reporting framework, and I think that will help with the clarity that you're asking for, Councillor Riley, as we move into next year. But I would sort of put a lot of context around the variation, for the reasons I've just described.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. Steve, have you anything to add to that? And Dave wants to come back in on that.
Yeah, thank you. And the one main point I was going to say, Rob's just covered regarding our new framework for next year. The other bit is we've changed the measures as we've been reporting. We've been refining them down from 60 plus down to 58 as well. So between quarters, you're seeing different measurement performance as well as we're trying to refine this. So it is moving, but the context is absolutely right, as Rob has just given. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. I take it you've got a follow up, and then I've got Sarah as well. Is that a legacy hand, or have you got a follow up?
No, it was a comment. Thanks, Adrian. It is to say thank you, and to note that we are in a chaotic situation and a complex situation, and just to say I hope that the redefined performance framework, therefore, will be ready for the start of the fiscal year, because having sat in the county for 4 years in May, I've never ever been able to understand the performance environment or felt able to scrutinise it effectively. So if there is work underway, fantastic, and if that work can simplify things, even better. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last indicated speaker on this topic is Sarah. Councillor Bode.
Yeah, I would agree with Dave. I do think this is a very, very confusing report. And I think perhaps some of us were thrown a bit because Kieran introduced it. And that was what threw me at the beginning, is whether we were on the right report, because I think we wouldn't normally expect a service head to introduce a report like this, which covered a much wider area. And if there's any consolation, Dave, I've been on the county council since 1994, and I'll tell you what the officers do. They lull you into a false sense of security. You think you understand it, and just as you think you understand it, they change it all, so you have to start all over again, and that way you're never quite sure where you are. So it's good tactics.
Classic.
Absolutely. Can I just come back to Sarah about the sickness? Because my point really was a wider one about sickness, not just in fire and rescue. I mean, it's good that it's come down. I'm wondering, obviously, I'm imagining there are staff who've been on the sick for had sickness for months and months and months, and there'll be others who never ever have any days off at all. And I wondered whether you can make a comment about where the balance is between, because obviously if somebody's got a very serious illness and they're off for a very long time, they're going to skew these figures enormously. And I just wonder whether she could elaborate a little bit on, I don't know, what proportion of our staff this actually covers. And I take the point about people working from home. I mean, I've worked from home for a very long time, and I just what you mean. You're not feeling 100%, but actually you can drag yourself to the computer and do some emails. Whereas if you have to make an hour's journey to go to work, you may not bother to go. So I do think people working from home will probably not report in sick. So really, just a bit more commentary around the level and where the average comes at which the number of staff actually have very little time off.
Okay, I think Richard's got some comments on that for us.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. If I can just come in on that particular point, around about 50% of our employees last year took no time off sick at all. Of the time that was taken off sick, it was nudging 11 days on average per person, and it's come down now to around about, I believe, 9.5. I'd need to check that figure, but it's come down quite significantly. As a general rule of thumb, around about 2/3 of the absence sits in longer term sickness absence, So this is people that have been off for a month or more, and 1/3 of the absence is short term, so less than that. So those are the general numbers, Councillor.
Thank you, Rich. Okay. Right. Thank you, and thank you very much, officers, for the excellent report there. Right, I think, Rich, you're back on now, because we're going to be moving on to our people strategy, which is on page 29 of our agenda. So, and Rich, you're down for presenting this.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, along with Alison. So if I can just share my screen with councillors.
I am struggling mightily with my internet this afternoon, so I do apologise if I'm missing anybody indicated in the speakers column.
Okay, could I just confirm, Chair, that you can see my screen?
Yes.
I can't, but can everybody else?
I can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, it must be my connection, so that's fine if others can.
Okay.
See it, yeah.
Excellent. I'll move ahead on that basis then. Thank you very much. So this presentation is around our refreshed people strategy. Our people strategy was developed in 2018 under our previous council plan and has been refreshed to align with our current plan through to 2025. The aim of today's presentation and the papers, which are in pages 29 to 70 of the packs, is really to give this committee an overview of the people strategy that we've developed and invite this committee to consider and comment on the proposed delivery priorities set out at Appendix 2 to the paper, so that these can inform the development of our people strategy delivery plan for the next year, 2021-2022. So whilst we've identified around about 20 to 25 different priorities that we want to work on, it's what we've actually done is prioritise the ones for next year, for 21-22, which as we work through the presentation, Alison will comment on. So the aim really is to take the committee through our culture, people vision, and comment on our values and behaviours, to look at our building blocks, of which there are 6 within our plan, and then the strategic outcomes, enablers and high-level measures. And councillors will note here that, that the process isn't actually linear, so there are things that will read across from one building block to another. For example, things that we talk about in culture and behaviours will read across into leadership and perhaps also into performance. And there are some consistent themes that run through everything that we do. Those include, for example, the agile working work that Sarah has commented on already. But in addition to that, themes such as equality, diversity and inclusion, which must run through everything that we do. The aim is to take you through the priority delivery themes that we've put in place, accepting that any plans that we develop for the forthcoming year will need to be fluid and will need to be fleet of foot if there are any changes. If we were to rewind, say, 12 months ago, I'm sure none of us would have predicted the events in America leading to the sad death of George Floyd, and the refocusing on the EDI agenda and COVID-19, of course, which we've all lived with for the past 9 months or so. We'll then move on to implementation review and measurement for success. And then at the end, if councillors could provide us with some input on the delivery priorities that we've identified, that would be excellent. So moving on, in terms of our vision, we've reshaped our vision from a people perspective to say that we really want to be a great place to work where diverse and talented people are enabled to be at their very best. In achieving that vision, we will work within our DNA, as we call it, our 5 values of high performance, collaboration, customer focus, accountability, and trustworthiness. And then our 6 behaviours. So these are unchanged from our previous people strategy. What is changed is obviously the outcomes that we're seeking and the enablers. And for the first time this year, we've put in some high-level measures as well, which, as we run through these, you'll see there's some consistency of themes that run through everything, which will drive our key business indicators as we move forward. So in terms of our first building block, which is culture, values and behaviours, we've defined 3 strategic outcomes and 3 enablers that we're seeking to achieve there. I won't run through them in detail because I'm sure that the papers have been read. And beneath that, there are 5 high-level measures that we will be looking to track the success of those outcomes and enablers against. I'm just going to hand over in a second now to Alison to go through the 3 delivery theme priorities within that building block. So if I can hand over now to Alison.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you, members. Yes, just before I start, I suppose it's just worth saying that in developing these delivery priorities, we've had a very keen eye on being able to balance the need to move our change agenda forward and our development projects forward, but also to balance the need to respond to the ever pressure that COVID creates for our teams and the work that we need to do to support reinstatement, etc. So it's been quite a careful balancing act on ensuring that we've got some development happening while maintaining business as usual. So we've got, under this particular building block, we've got 3 areas that we want to focus on. The first being employee engagement. Now, this is really important for us to have a framework that we can engage with our staff and that we can get regular feedback from them on how they're feeling and what they think about working for Warwickshire County Council. And during the pandemic, that's been absolutely crucial to us. So we have been running a series of short, what we call check-in surveys. We've done 4 to date, where we focus and theme those surveys on some very particular things so that we can get quick and rapid feedback from the workforce on those areas. Our intention then for the next 12 months is to continue with those sharp, focused check-in surveys, and we have those planned now up until June next year. And at that point, we'll then look to see what we need going forward in order to continue with that engagement programme of work. Regarding sustainable and resilient workforce, this is another key project for us and something that members have already picked up on this morning in their questions with regards to absence levels within the County Council. Absence attendance levels has been something that has been of great interest to members for a number of years. And we're really pleased to see that recently our attendance levels have improved and absence levels have gone down. But it's important that we're not complacent about that and that we have put measures in place to better understand our long-term sickness and look what we need to do to support employees that are on long-term sickness arrangements and how we can return them to the workforce as quickly and as effectively as possible. But also, whilst we continue with our support around the pandemic, we have to remember that the resilience of our workforce is really important to us, and the well-being of the teams that are working from home or those frontline services that are continuing to operate. So ensuring that we've got the right projects and programmes in place to support that workforce during this difficult time is going to be a key priority. So the third project within this building block is ED, again something that's been touched on earlier, but EDI is something that runs through the whole of this people strategy and is a really important focus for us, especially as we've mentioned with recent events and activities, etc. We've done some very focused work here at the moment. We've got a new action plan, a 10-point action plan, where in the first instance we're going to be focusing on data and also education. And we've also done quite a bit of work at reframing our working groups and forums that support EDI so that this agenda can continue to move forward with both pace and energy. So they're the three delivery themes for culture, values and behaviour.
Lovely, thank you very much, Alison. Moving on then to our second building block, which is leadership. And we've framed our leadership very much around taking personal responsibility and leadership being an act rather than a status. Focusing very much on equipping our leaders to provide agility and situationally responsive leadership, and to take personal accountability and act always in the interests of one Warwickshire. Again, you will see there that we're indicating engagement as a high level for measurement within this area, in addition to tracking people through to leadership roles within the organisation, and the percentage of our leadership leaders meeting and exceeding their performance objectives. So those are the headlines there in terms of our strategic outcomes and measures for leadership. And we've got one significant project there that Alison will take members through now.
Thank you, Rich. Yes, the priority area under leadership is people metrics for managers. What we believe is that we need to equip our managers with the capabilities to empower them to lead, and therefore, in order to do that, they need to have access to data and to trends and to be able to understand the data within their services. So therefore, a key delivery priority for us over the next 12 months will be to deliver some really consistent and regular data and insights to them so they have that information to hand. So that is the key priority for leadership.
Thanks, Alison. On to our third building block then of organisation development and design. And this is very much around empowering people to take ownership, enabling evidence-based decisions to be taken, to have flexible resourcing models in terms of how we operate within the organisation, and for people to understand the need to change and embrace the need for change to ensure the good of one Warwickshire. So in terms of enablers here, we talk about maintaining integrity of our organisational principles. As you know, there's been a significant investment in putting new structures and service redesigns in place within the organisation. But this next stage is very much around moving forward with that fitness to deliver around this and enabling effective decision making and clear and appropriate governance arrangements within the organisation. Very much around breaking down barriers and enabling collaboration and innovation and accountability. So the key area here, which Alison will take you through, is very much around our agile working approach.
Yes, thanks, Rich. So this is what we're calling flexible and agile working. Clearly, the COVID pandemic has expedited our work in this area as all of our services move to a working from home situation. And whilst we've reinstated a number of services, still a large proportion of our workforce continues to work from home. So our priorities here are twofold. First of all, it's about making sure that those individuals that work from home in the short to medium term are supported and comfortable and have the right resources and the right facilities in order to do that in a safe and effective way. But also looking at what our long-term needs are organisationally with regards to flexible and agile working and the building infrastructure that sits around that. So following the pandemic response, we reviewed our existing flexible working offer and we've proposed a new agile working offer which sets out both principles and expectations, and we're proposing to launch that from January 21 following member approval. And that will set out a new offer of service delivery that will both deal with the immediate need and also the longer term organisational needs.
Excellent, thanks Alison. So our fourth building block, very much a key focus on performance, as you'd expect. A clear line of sight from what we're trying to achieve organisationally right the way through to individual priorities and objectives. Embracing a high performance culture that's measured by organisational and individual outcomes, and our people being accountable for their behaviours and performance and taking every opportunity to improve. We're looking very much at clearly defined roles, parameters and expectations, as you'd expect, having regular evidence-based performance and development reviews, and those being driven by having really open and honest conversations with people. And we recognise high performance and also at the same time have a preparedness to address underperformance. So we have measures in there around individual performance objectives, performance against plans, and of course the engagement measures that you'd expect.
Thank you, Rich. So the priority theme here reads as business as usual, and I suppose it would be worth explaining what we mean by that. So over the last 2 years, we've done some quite significant work with regards to our performance and appraisal process for our tier 0 to 3 leadership posts. And now we feel we want to take the opportunity to really embed that and make sure it's working effectively, etc. Maybe make some tweaks if we feel that that's necessary, but to really get that working smoothly before we start looking to make any further changes to those processes for other areas of the organisation. So for the next 12 months, our focus is really going to be on embedding those existing arrangements and making sure they're working effectively. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. Moving on to building block 5 of 6, which is very much around reward and recognition, and obviously some linkage back to performance, as you'd expect. Our strategic outcomes here, we want to reach a position whereby people recognise that our reward and recognition arrangements within the organisation are fair and equitable, that people are recognised for their high performance and their personal contribution, and that this actually enables us to attract talent to the organisation, retain that talent, engage and motivate the workforce that our citizens deserve. So we have an employer value proposition and reward strategy that reflects what we stand for and what we aspire to be. We're partway through delivering that strategy. We retain and motivate our best talent by recognising performance and personal contribution, and we have recognition arrangements within the organisation that are fair and accessible to all. And again, you would expect to see these outcomes measured through our retention rates of our staff, our engagement rates, our recruitment indicators, and also reward market benchmarking. So over to Alison for the delivery themes here.
Thank you, Rich. Yes, 2 key themes here, recognition platform and the employer value proposition. If I take the recognition platform first, so we've just moved to a new provider for our recognition platform with an organisation called VivUp. So our priority is to make sure that we transfer all of the existing arrangements from the old provider over to the new provider effectively. So that's going to be the focus for the next 12 months is making sure that handover is smooth and effective. With regards to our EVP or our employee value proposition, it might just be worth explaining what we mean by this. This is the way we articulate within our advertising and recruitment processes what makes Warwickshire County Council unique. Why do we stand out from another organisation? What can we offer to potential employees that would make us an attractive opposition to somebody that is looking for a new job? So a lot of work is being done around this to sort of really identify what the key benefits and value that can be driven from working for Warwickshire County Council. And that's the work we want to take forward over the next 12 months, is taking that emphasis and ensuring that it's echoed and solid within our recruitment campaigns.
Thanks, Alison. So on to our final building block before we move to questions and input. Talent development and career opportunities. Again, you can see the EDI theme coming very strongly through here, in terms of our people being celebrated for their diversity and bringing their capabilities and behaviours to drive that high performance culture that we deserve. But our people can develop and grow through career pathways that enable them to fulfil their potential and their aspirations, and also just to be their best selves. And that our people are our primary talent pipeline, enabling delivery of exceptional services both today and tomorrow. So again, in terms of measures, as you can imagine, the reasons here that we've moved to measuring this through engagement, through our learning and development matrix, and also through our staffing mix and profile of our staffing. We've got 3 key priority delivery themes in this area that Alison will just run through for you.
Thanks, Rich. Yes, 3 key themes. The first one is recruitment review. As part of the pandemic, we took back into HROD a number of recruitment activities that had previously been delegated to managers, activities around pre-employment checks, etc. And we did this to support managers that were needing to hire staff really quickly. In doing some further research and some review with managers, we're actually now looking to sort of make that a permanent feature of work going forward. So we're having some ongoing discussions with service managers about how best we can support them with their recruitment work, and then looking to make changes within HROD so that we can accommodate that for them. The other area that we're going to look at is the Tier 1 to 4 assessment review. So we have done some work over the last 12 months where we have reviewed our competency framework that we use when we are recruiting managers to Tier 1 to 4 posts. And we just want to take stock and review that work and make sure that it is fit and appropriate going forward, so that we can embed it into our business as usual. And then finally, induction and onboarding. Once we've recruited all these wonderful new staff, it's really important that the way we bring them into the organisation, the way we welcome them into the organisation, has a really important impact on how well they can perform and how quickly they can perform in their role. And clearly at the moment we are bringing in a lot of staff into a virtual organisation and inducting them virtually. So we want to look at that induction and onboarding process to make sure, again, that it is meeting the needs of new starters, and that they're getting the most effective start to the organisation that they can under the circumstances.
That's great. Thanks, Alison. So in summary, in terms of implementation, review and measurement of success, we've taken some substantial input in terms of pulling together this strategy and the accompanying themes for the work plan. That's involved quite extensive discussion with our How We Work board, with our corporate board acting as change portfolio board, also our staff networks, our trade union partners and colleagues across the HR and OD directorate. We're looking now to launch early in 2021. In terms of defining success and measurement targets, obviously we've set the high-level measurements within the strategy, but each of the activities will have its own measurements as part of a delivery plan that we'll be operating to as we move forward. Things do move very quickly, and whilst we've set a direction through to 2025, our aim is that we will track and review this annually to ensure that the activities that we put in place are right for now and are right for the future. Because we will make incremental progress towards achieving the outcomes year on year, but we want to test out that we're always on track with that. So the aim of today really was to take any input that this committee are able to give us in terms of the priority themes for 2021-22 to really enable us to shape and refine that plan and ensure that we've got something that really is fit for purpose. So if we could move to questions now, Chair, that would be lovely.
Thank you very much indeed. That is an absolutely excellent report, a really essential strategy, and we're trying to deliver it at probably the most difficult time to deliver a strategy like this, but it's the time when it's most needed. So let's go to questions from members, and I've got 4 members who have indicated, and I'll take them in the order that they've shown a hand. So Councillor Webb.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Going through that and being probably aware that there are so many people being isolated, and when I say isolated, I mean in this home working environment, which obviously clearly does have many, many advantages. One of the keys to me in terms of people development is their ability to communicate closely with colleagues in their departments, in their areas, who've got experience in certain things, and you would find that tends to work pretty well in an office environment, you know, when you can say, well, you know, people see expressions, they say, well, what's your problem? And you say, well, I'm just wondering about this. You say, well, that's straightforward, whatever. Much more difficult to have those sorts of conversations when you're working from home. I mean, clearly you can specifically contact someone and ask them a question if you feel like it, but people being able to develop themselves and learn and get really to grips and feel enthusiastic and want to deliver on some of the tasks that they are involved with, I think may well be slightly damaged because they can't get that sort of bouncing off each other scenario, which most of us are familiar with. And I'm just wondering if Alison particularly has got any comments in terms of that work that's going on as to how we can overcome and help that to develop even better. Is that something you can answer, Alison?
I'll give it a try, Councillor. It's a really good point and one that has been mentioned. I've had new people come into my service and my team during the pandemic, and it's something that we've been very conscious of, that you miss that sitting next to a colleague and being able to sort of share that information. What I can say is that as part of the sort of work around launching of the 365 Microsoft 365 program of works and supporting the software and the technology that colleagues have, we've done a lot of work on trying to encourage and show people how they can use the online facilities to help with things like that. So, for example, the chat facility has been a very good opportunity to help with things like that. Individuals can post questions within teams, and all members of the team can see that and sort of, you know, support those questions, etc. They've set up little team huddles as well, where they meet with people on a regular basis to try and share that information. So there's been a lot of work that's been put in place to help facilitate those arrangements and make sure that those arrangements are put in place for new employees. But you're quite right, that there's only so far that the technology can go to help with things like that. But we're certainly putting a lot of frameworks in place to give individuals the tools to be able to access that kind of information.
Yeah. Well, that's really good to know. So, sorry to come back, Chairman, but I wonder if those finer techniques could perhaps be shared with members so that we can actually share them with, you know, local businesses and people we know where some people might be struggling. And I know we have very, very high standards, and I'm sure it would be a lovely thing to be able to share if there are things we can in that sort of way. Thank you.
Yeah, I can take that back. The person who's leading on the supporting people project, I'll have a conversation with her and see what we can do and if there's any way that we can share that information.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. Thank you, Aaron.
And just to build on Alison's point there as well, Councillor, in terms of looking forward, one of the things that we'll be addressing is what the Office of the Future looks like, providing those opportunities for people to collaborate effectively when they are physically in a workplace. So I think it's important to note that we're looking at both elements of this.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you very much. Okay, next question is from Councillor Riley. Dave.
Thanks, Adrian. An incredible piece of work without any doubt whatsoever. I suppose one that we would expect from a £500 million euro organisation. My question relates to point 2, and that is your defining success and measurement of targets, because there are no targets clearly outlined within this report. So while the ambition and the intention is totally spot on, I can't see at the moment any coherent management framework to make sure that any of it is delivered. So will officers be bringing the performance management framework back to this group before this group approves or considers what we've been presented today? Because it's, at the moment, Chair, I don't wish to be difficult, and I know I'm being difficult by saying this, but it's not complete.
Thank you, Dave. No, you're not being difficult. It's our job here to have a scrutiny role, and that is what we're doing. So, Rich, do you want to answer that, or Alison?
Yeah, absolutely. If I can come in initially, Chair, and answer Councillor Riley's question. Councillor, in the majority of cases, the measurement framework is currently in place. So if I can actually talk through some of those high-level measures. So I've referred extensively within the report to turnover. We do track our employee turnover rates and attrition. A second around sustainable and resilient workforce, and also an indicator of morale more generally is about attendance, which is another area that we already track extensively within the strategy. We have measures in place currently around employee satisfaction and engagement. So those measures exist and are reported through our key business indicators already. You're absolutely right in saying, Councillor, as we move forward and we refine the detail around these plans, it may be that there is a necessity to refine some of those measures and to develop them further. And I think if that is the case, it's what we will be looking to do is to report back both to staff and pensions and to this committee on any changed measures that we put in place and explaining the background around those.
Thank you very much for that, Rich. Dave, does that cover what? Well, Rob, you've got something to add on this. Do you want to come in before Dave comes back?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, Rich has covered a lot of it, but on each page, this is a high-level strategy deliberately. It is not the delivery plan, and it's not the performance management framework. It's the direction that we're intending to go in. On each page, we've listed the half dozen or fewer key metrics. We're measuring those very, very much more regularly than we ever did before through check-in surveys. The depth and richness of our information about these things has never been better, and it'll be through the performance framework and the delivery planning that we will deliver the strategy. But I can give you assurance that there is a significant framework to measure all of these things in some detail, and indeed we are anticipating the results of the sort of annual survey questions on staff engagement imminently. Which will give us a very good handle on our progress. And we've talked earlier about staff sickness, which is probably the number one concern, where we're seeing a very, very significant improvement. So there is a very strong framework underpinning this very high-level strategy.
Thank you. Dave, does that satisfy you?
I'm grateful for the officers' feedback. page 44 says that the measures are being defined, so I'm confident to hear that the measures aren't being defined, that they actually are in place. There are 22 performance measures within this high-level strategy. And, I'm looking forward to officers coming back, Chair, and explaining to us how you manage 22 different measures to deliver your outcomes. Whether your outcomes are tactical or strategic doesn't matter. You've still got to have a close relationship between activity and outcome. Thank you.
Well, this is certainly something I'm sure we'll have a report come back to us again in the future as to how it's moving forward. Right, Parminder, you're the next indicated speaker.
Thank you, Chair. My connection is too good, so just bear with me if you lose me. First of all, can I just thank all the staff and the officers for an excellent report. I'm not a very clever man, but even I understood it. It's very simply presented and it's very good. Thank you for that. Just two related quick questions. One is that the 6 building blocks delivery of, it would almost certainly mean much more time pressure on the line manager at all levels. So has that been sort of accounted for? And in the reward and recognition block, you mentioned the new platform, WebUp. Could you just tell us a little bit more what that is and how that might work? Thank you.
Thank you, Parminder. Rich, is that one for you to take?
Thanks, Chair. I'm looking at Alison because I've taken a number of the questions to see if she wanted to take it, but I'm absolutely fine to talk through on this one, absolutely. So where we are, Councillor, in terms of the Viva platform, it's a development that we've been working on for several months that's actually been implemented from November of this year. So essentially, it's what we've been doing is within Alison's team, we've been migrating the benefits that we have currently across to the new platform because VivUp uses a different provider to our previous flexible benefits offer. So that work has been undertaken already. So we've translated across as business as usual. We've also taken the opportunity within that platform to highlight some of the benefits that we've already got in place that are publicised elsewhere. So, for example, our employee assistance programme is now featured on the VivUp platform so that it's together in one place, along with benefits such as childcare vouchers and cycle to work scheme, etc. And we also have a number of different affinity benefits that are available through that, which enable our employees to access discounts on a number of different products. For example, a percentage off various retailers, whether that's from anything from electrical goods through to home shopping. So it's very much around bringing those benefits together in one place. As we develop the project going forward, it's what we'll be looking to do is to introduce a range of different benefits and also to maximise the opportunities for recognition through that VivUp platform. So that's the next phase of development. So hopefully that answers the second part of Councillor Birdie's question. I think the first part is very relevant in terms of the pressure that this puts on line management. And I think one of the challenges for any line manager in a larger organisation is very much around information. So that's why that features very heavily within our strategy to ensure that our managers have access to the information that they need around people and have the skills as well to manage those people. So that's been very much our focus within that strategy and will continue to be our focus going forward so that our managers are better equipped in terms of information and skills to perform the role that we're asking of them.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you, Alison. Parminder, does that satisfy you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I'm a little better informed by the WebUp. I'm pleased to see that you got these green travel plans on there as a benefit, because that certainly is something the council ought to be looking at. and the barriers to travel to work and make it greener. No, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lovely. Okay, the last question on this topic is from Sarah, Councillor Bode.
Thank you. I'm looking particularly at pages in the actual report, page 12 of the appendix, page 12, and then page 18 around organisational development and design. A couple of questions. I appreciate this has been a very volatile time for our staff, but I also appreciate that many are quite comfortable with either working from home or working part of the time from home. I did see a comment on Yammer. I'm hoping it was a joke. Somebody said they were working off their ironing board. I say I do hope that was a joke. But I mean, presumably, we are not just providing the IT equipment. I'm assuming as an employer we have a duty to make sure that our staff are working safely and properly at home. I mean, I'm a home worker. My employer makes sure my chair is correct and asks me about the height of my desk and all that sort of stuff. So I'm assuming that we will be doing that. The second question was around for some people, actually being at work is a bit of an escape. I was very struck by a comment made by, of all people, Theresa May in Parliament not very long ago, talking about domestic violence and saying for many people actually being in work is their safe place. Being away from home is actually safe for them because they're away perhaps from an abusive partner, a difficult relationship. And I just wondered whether you got any thoughts about how you were thinking about dealing with that, because I can imagine somebody who's in that situation, if a partner says, well, why are you going to work? Why aren't you at home? You can be at home, or your colleagues are at home. Why are you still insisting on going to work? And I just wonder if we got any thoughts about that. I do have another question, Adrian, on the further appendix on the equality assessment, but if I'll just start with those two first. Thank you.
Okay, I think Alison's going to take those for you, Sarah.
Yes, no, thank you. Great questions. So I think first of all, what we can say is that at the very beginning of the pandemic, we immediately gave everybody access to £100 allowance to spend on any resources or equipment or sundry items that they needed in order to sort of make themselves comfortable at home and able to access their work. That was the sort of immediate response. Since then, we've obviously got people working from home over a longer, prolonged period of time, and we've needed to really consider, what support we offer to employees as this has progressed. And more recently, what we've actually done is lifted that £100 cap. But what we've said is we now require every member of staff to conduct a display screen equipment assessment. And then on the back of that, we're asking that to be shared with their line manager and to talk through what else they need in order to facilitate their working from home. And then if the DSE assessment points to either equipment or facilities or arrangements that need to be put in place, then that is then used to support that individual employee. So we're hoping that over a period of time, everybody will have conducted that process. In addition to that, individuals can actually request an office space, a fixed workplace setting, if they're either pointing at either well-being issues or safety issues at home. So it's a confidential application process which goes through our health and safety team. But if they can come forward and demonstrate that they have issues and they need to access a fixed workplace, then we can provide that for all of them. It goes through to tactical cell to be approved so that we've got some monitoring of that. And that's just to make sure that we're not putting people in the office that's going to create a risk for other office workers, that there's some probity around the decision making with regard to that. But certainly anybody that was coming forward that was having issues with domestic violence, etc., we would give them access to a workplace setting. In addition to that, as part of the information that we're making available to staff, there's a range of information that's being posted on the internet, but some of the signposting is around some of the issues, the sensitive issues that you've mentioned there, Councillor Bode, around domestic violence, etc., and where people can get help and support if they're in that sort of situation. So I hope with that kind of three-pronged approach, we're dealing with those issues as they come. I suppose it's worth saying as well, the check-in surveys that we're running on a very regular basis are an ongoing source of information for us. And we're asking those questions around well-being and support that's needed, and very much using that to inform and develop our strategy and our response as we go forward and as we learn more.
Thank you. I think that's very reassuring. And I do worry that people may feel under pressure almost to work from home, even if they don't actually want to, or don't feel comfortable for whatever reason. And I think also some of our staff will be in houses with lots of space. Others may well be in a shared house. Their only personal space is a bedroom, and they're perhaps working in a small room with perhaps not proper desk access and stuff like that. So I'm reassured to hear that you are taking all that into account. If I can just ask one second question, which is on the equality impact assessment, is that okay? I find this absolutely fascinating, reading all through this. What I found most fascinating was that you knew all sorts of stuff around religion and sexual orientation and stuff, but when it came to pregnancy and maternity, you hadn't got any data. And forgive me if I'm wrong, but I would have thought actually pregnancy particularly would have been something that would have been fairly easy to know, because people would be telling you and then going off on maternity leave. So I was a bit surprised about that. The other question I had was about the number of female employees. I'll just get to the right page. Yes, we're saying 69% of our employees are female, and talking about the gender pay gap. I just wondered if you've done any analysis of the various levels at which women and men are working, so that actually, I suspect, I mean, in my employers, for example, which is some of you may know, it's an engineering institute. I'm a chartered engineer and work at a professional engineering institute. My boss is a man. Every single person that works for him is a woman, and so there are that, so that you get this differential between where women sit in the organisation. Now, I'm very well aware that we have lots of women in very senior positions within Warwickshire, but I just wondered if there had been an analysis done of what percentage of women. I mean, I would sort of expect it to fall the higher up you get to the organisation, until you get to the very top, of course, where it's 100% female.
Rich or Alison, which one do you want to take that?
That's fine. I can take that. I think if I start with the second question in terms of the split within the organisation, we do quite a detailed report on an annual basis to Staff and Pensions Committee, which covers off our equality indicators within the organisation. And within that, we do track equality at a functional level, at a service level, as well as at a headline whole organisational level. So we can say, for example, that the situation with our people directorate being largely female dominated is reversed out slightly in certain other service areas. In fire and rescue, for example, Barnaby and the team there have been working extensively around the diversity agenda and how we actually take matters forward within fire and rescue. So in short, yes, we absolutely do understand the situation at a whole organisational level. In terms of pregnancy, I think that was a really insightful question. What we don't do, I can honestly say, is track at a whole organisational level currently, because we tend to deal with the management of pregnancy-related cases with employees at an individual line management level. Obviously, the data is there within our systems. You're quite right in saying, Councillor Bowe, because obviously we do know when our employees disclose that they're pregnant, but it's not something that we track at a whole organisational level. I think owing to the timescales and the individual reporting timescales.
And I guess also it wouldn't be a target, wouldn't you? I mean, you may well want to monitor just proportions of various, can I dare say, sort of minority people within the organisation. But a pregnancy, you wouldn't have a target around how many people you want to get pregnant in the organisation or not, would you? So I can absolutely see that point is not one that you would do. So thank you for that. And I've only thought about also, obviously, staff and pensions will be the obvious place that you would send this stuff in more detail. But because it was here, I was prompted to ask the question.
Absolutely, Councillor. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Core is indicating. Cam, have you got something to tell us?
No, far from it. Far from it. I have no stalk arriving at my door. Let me tell you. But I just want to pick up on that because I find it quite interesting as to why we would want that as an indicator or even a target, because it's quite personal. To fall pregnant and also from memory, we always, certainly going back when I was in a corporate company, we always treated a person on maternity as being in work. So, they were never classed as on maternity leave. So, from my personal preference, I don't think I would want it as a target, or certainly for interest, Sarah, Councillor Bode, I can understand your question, but as a target, I wouldn't think it's necessary at this point in time.
Thank you.
It's just a comment, really.
Okay, right. We have got two more fairly substantial items to get through. We've got a very substantial exempt item to get through, and we've been running for an hour and a half already. So I would encourage brevity, and if we do need a break before the exempt item, I'm happy to look at that. Sarah, you're indicating.
I only mentioned it because it was there, and I've already said it certainly wouldn't be a target. But if it hadn't been there, I wouldn't have mentioned it. So somebody thought it was a good idea to put it into a report.
Okay, thank you. Right. Can I encourage you to turn to page 71 of your agenda pack, please, councillors? We're going to move on to the operational benchmarking performance report of the Fire and Rescue Service. And Barnaby, I believe this is yours. And Rich, could you end the screen sharing now, please? So Barnaby can take this up.
Thank you. And I'll take that hint of about brevity and try to make progress. To be clear, councillors, we are talking now about fire and rescue performance. This is benchmarking from April 2019 to March 2020, and it's benchmarking Warwickshire Fire and Rescue against the 43 other English fire and rescue services. It's been drawn together by the Insight team, so I'll start by thanking Gemma Bull for the work she's done there. There's a slight caution or qualifier here that there's no national audit review now to ensure that all services are recording everything exactly the same. So there's a slight qualifier there, but other than that, this is still a good indicator of performance. Certainly until HMI have been in business for a little bit longer and have got longer performance data. Generally, lower ranked is better, so you want to be first rather than 44th. I don't plan to go through the report paragraph by paragraph, I'm sure you'll be delighted to know, but to draw your attention to one or 2 points, if I may. 2.5 and 2.6, accidental dwelling fires and fire deaths and injuries. Obviously, Warwickshire very low, that's good news. No reason for complacency, though. And to steal Councillor Crump's thunder, we must keep our prevention work going on. I can't guarantee that tomorrow there won't be a fatal house fire, God forbid, that ruins our stats for this year and causes quite a degree of grief in the county. There is also, this is, to be clear, this is mainly pre-COVID, and although the report that you had earlier, the quarterly report, makes it look as if so far the prevention work is continuing to work, we're obviously not getting as much hands-on prevention work as we have been previously, so we're keeping a watching brief on that. But the figures for the period that this report covers are good. At 2.8, special services, this is the one that's probably most prone to be statistically misleading. It covers a multitude of sins. So, for example, it shows Warwickshire 6 out of 44, which is a good position. If you were to break that down and look at flooding we would be 23rd out of 44. And if you were to look at rescue from water, we would be 43rd out of 44. So our position here reflects the fact there are other activities we don't do much of. Because of Warwickshire's building stock, we don't do many lift rescues, and because we challenge aggressively when called to those. So just to highlight, that's for special services. At the moment, we're good at getting people out of water. We're less good at preventing them from driving in the first place. That brings me on to 2.9, road traffic collisions. There's benchmarks, RTCs, that we've been called to. So the police's figures will look substantially different to ours because they will record every RTC. We record the ones we are actually called out to. Rates are dropping. Our position is maintained from the previous year, but it's still concerning. We're still 33rd out of 44 on the rate per capita, per 10,000 capita. Surrounding Shire brigades, Northamptonshire, Oxfordshire, Hereford and Worcester, Hereford and Worcester are in similar levels, but Staffordshire and Gloucestershire are lower than ours. At first looking, that would suggest a link between motorways and high-speed roads, but that doesn't line up with what my colleagues would tell me. We actually very rarely go out to motorways. What we tend to get is people perhaps who've just come off the motorways and not realise they've just come off the motorways. So there's definitely something here in common with the driving into water about driver behaviour. We're now looking at data for number of miles travelled, trying to break it down by road type in more detail, trying to get a better understanding so that we can better target the initiatives. The good news for RTC reduction is that the rates among 17 to 25-year-olds have dropped, but we now have a bit of a theme emerging of middle-aged males, dare I say it, be they on motorbikes, in cars, or indeed on bicycles. They appear to be our new emerging target demographic for this kind of incident. And I'll rest at that point, Chair, and invite questions if I may.
Thank you very much, Barnaby. And I'm sure in 10 or 15 years' time, when I become a middle-aged male, I can look forward to being part of your initiative. In general, this is a very good report, and I know there's never any complacency. And I know Kieran made the comment when we first looked at fire deaths, one death is a death too many. So I know there's no complacency in the fire service. We'll take questions on this. Councillor Redford, why?
That's it.
Well,
Got
I
it.
think you're on mute.
Yeah, no, I've got it. No. Yes, one question on property fires, or primary fires as we seem to call them now. We did, not us, but nationally, we have gone through various times when domestic equipment has been the cause of quite serious domestic fires. I know it's quite low at the present time, but do we, as part of our information collation, do we track domestic equipment incidents as to how they might be, causing an increase in incidents?
Yes, we do, Councillor, is the short answer. We have any incident of a suspicious nature has a fire investigator goes along and looks into it. If the incident is more obvious, so for the sake of argument, the tumble dryer is obviously at the centre of the fire, it's recorded as such. We have relatively low numbers, but we feed them in nationally. I'm not going to name a manufacturer, but if a given make of tumble dryer was generating a number of fires across the country, that would be identified. In fact, there is one manufacturer that's recently felt the wrath of the Fire Rescue Service as they weren't cooperating at first.
Right.
So yeah, yes, we do. We feed into the national picture, Councillor. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor, if I may, Chair, just a very
Karen, you comment on that.
That also forms part of our safe and well checks as well. So that as we carry out any safe and well check in residents' homes, we have a list of those white goods that we know we've got concerns with, and then also we feed that same data back into this prevention centre now. So it's all very well triangulated now.
Thank you. And Chairman, could I just check? is Barnaby going to carry on with sections 2, 10 and 11? Or are you finished?
I finished my summary, Councillor, but I'm clearly happy to take questions on any part of it. I was picking out what I thought were the significant points that needed making on it.
Yeah. So. Okay, Chairman, if I may, 210 and through to 11 in particular does show the great breadth of expertise that and commitment that the Fire and Rescue Service has in the community. But on hospital to home, if I could ask, do we intend to extend that programme, i.e. Rugby or Stratford? Because it's so welcome, locally in the Warwick, area. I just wondered whether we had any ideas of moving it on.
I think I might invite the Chief Forester to comment on that one. I'm happy to comment, but I feel he may want to talk.
Thank you, Barnaby. Your ESP is working well. Thank you for the question, Councillor. And we have actually expanded hospital to home now, so it does involve all three of the major hospitals that cover the Warwickshire conurbation, and we even have relationships with some of the smaller hospitals now as well. Certainly, that came to the fore through COVID, and we kind of extended our offer. It now forms a significant wraparound care package for anybody leaving home. And I would see that there is a natural relationship then, therefore, for us to also get more engaged in the falls prevention work and also falls assist potentially. So that's an area of prevention I would see that naturally helps us manage demand for public health, adult social services and other services as well. But we need to obviously come to the right arrangements with all stakeholders in that. So I think absolutely long may it continue as it is at the moment, which is the expanded version. And I see that it could be a nice segue to an even greater offer to the community.
Yeah, certainly would be, Chairman. Nursery boxes, Chairman. How do we make these available to childminders in particular? Is it just through leaflets through doors, or through the particular place, childminders, or how do we actually advertise it?
Yeah, and if I can start off on that, so certainly by request, so not only childminders but homeschooling as well. If we receive any requests from homeschoolers, then we can make provision of some of those materials. But what the team have been doing, and again, particularly through COVID, is driven this, is to be more virtual now. So thankfully, most homes are fairly well IT enabled, and we've been trying to deliver a lot of our prevention and schools education services online now. There's been a series of fire safety talks that have been delivered, and a lot of materials now that are available for the education systems. That's us working with Ian Budd's team very closely and linking in to ensure that their products that are available for anybody that has been homeschooling.
Thank you, Chairman. I have one other, if I may.
You can, Wallace, no problem at all.
Really, it's about the breadth of commitment, to the community you have. I've always been concerned about obesity in young children, and I know that there are one or two fire brigades. I think Lancashire comes to mind, where they have been giving what shall I do it? Physical fitness training, all centred around obesity in young children, trying to learn lose weight, keep them fit and active. And this is mainly on whole time stations, of course, with the use of multi gyms, etc. And I wondered whether we'd given any thought to that type of programme coming into Warwickshire.
Yes, absolutely, Councillor. So definitely for young children, I mean, certainly the Fire Fit campaign that we started off through COVID again was one that we always saw that could be expanded to ensure that it's supporting the health and social care kind of arrangements that are going on now, and that's supporting not only the young but some of the elderly, and making our fire stations more accessible for particular groups. I think there's certainly issues there that we need to recognise, that we need to make sure they're safe places as well. But working with the voluntary sector, I think, is something we can definitely do more of, and that will allow us to support teams and groups coming into fire stations for key activities. So yeah, Fire Fit is definitely something we've been advocating and pushing, and that was also with an idea that the same teams can deliver those in open spaces, perhaps not in the winter, but in open spaces, and engaging indeed with young people to also allow them to attain accredited qualifications in physical training and health and well-being. So that also supports them greater mobility into attaining jobs and careers. So it's again a bit of a broader offer that we're trying to look at. And then also there is the citizenship courses that we're running in January, February. I'm looking for the Assistant Chief to give me a bit of a nod if that's about right, January, Feb. And that's very much about...
Yes.
Thanks, sir. That's also about kind of signposting young children who are on the cusp of exclusion from schools into the right kind of pathways, including some health and wellbeing information that we offer them.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I've got 3 indicated speakers, and as I said, if I can encourage brevity, because we have got a lot more to get through this afternoon. So, first questions from Sarah.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. First, carrying on that on page 1881, I mean, I think it's really fantastic to just see this enormous range of things that fire and rescue is doing that probably most members of the public wouldn't even think that you will be doing. So whether it is hospitals at home or the stuff around nurseries or the stuff you do in primary schools, secondary schools, I think it's really, really good. And all that community safety stuff, I think, is worth every penny that gets spent on it. And I know it's very targeted so that the most in need get these services. I think it's really, really good. Coming back to the general around the report, I was quite surprised one thing that Barnaby highlighted actually at the beginning was that the data isn't subject to a national audit process and therefore can't be guaranteed that it's consistent, which I thought was a bit strange. I mean, I had assumed that this was something sort of statutory information that you had to provide, and if not everybody is doing it in the same way, it seems not quite meaningless, but a bit strange. I also wondered how all this fitted into the inspection process, because I would assume that the inspectors would look at this sort of data here, but I would say it looks good. I mean, the statistical niceties, once you start noticing the Isles of Scilly and the Isle of Wight in these figures, you can't take your eyes off them. And it just shows, I don't know how people actually live on the Isles of Scilly, nowhere near 100,000, I guess. And I guess for them, you were talking about statistical anomalies earlier on. I would imagine for them, one fire on the Isle of Scilly presumably makes an absolutely massive difference. But obviously, I think this is a good point. But I just have some questions, not just answers on this. Got a couple of points. That would be great. Thank you.
If I could take the one about the qualifier was around what gets recorded. So how is it recorded at Farsid? And I'll probably let Kieran take the bigger picture about HMI and the look forward, if that's all right.
Thank you. I'll try and be brief. So I met with the Home Office this Friday, in fact, to talk about this and a number of other matters. They are trying to be more accurate in their recording and more consistent. But what I've offered is that we create our own little benchmarking group. In the past, we've always had kind of family groups that have been identified, but they weren't relative to one another really. So the correlations were difficult to achieve, and trends were difficult to achieve. What I'm proposing back into the Home Office is that in addition to the national statistics that go in, we also start to create arrangements with Gloucestershire and Oxfordshire, which are on our borders, have a very similar risk profile. And that also allows us to work very closely with the management teams there to start to drive down the risks and improve performance, because respectively we're all doing fairly well. So you'll have noted on the infographic around road traffic collisions, Gloucestershire are right up there. And it might be this anomaly around motorways, but equally working really closely with them and understanding what initiatives they have, we can seek good practice amongst that small group, that smaller family group. And the Home Office are happy to take that on board now, so that's encouraging.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I've lost my sound completely there, I'm afraid. I've got two more indicated speakers. Dave Riley, Councillor Riley.
Thanks, Adrian. I mean, a great answer that has just been given to Sarah's question, which really was the nature of my question. It was recognising really that the fantastic report and service that's being delivered across Warwickshire in terms of accidental dwelling deaths and also casualties, recognising the complexity of data recording. It's still a stunning service when you look at the rurality of our community of 500,000 people. Was it 550,000 people? To think that we're counting fire deaths and injuries on one hand is absolutely stunning. I mean, I don't know what fire service feel that they might need in terms of support to continue to maintain this performance, because once you've delivered it, you have got to keep maintaining it, and that's the biggest challenge of all. So I mean, I don't know whether there's anything that the officers would recommend to the panel that we scrutinise further to enable them to continue this astounding performance.
I think that's a superb question, Councillor, and I think it's the kind of it's the nub of prevention that, and in its broadest context. So when I delivered the fire deaths report, I think it's my first OSC as Chief Fire Officer, and I mentioned the fact that we had a number of fire deaths and none of those were acceptable, and how we can go upstream to try and drive those down. I think it's the upstream stuff that we need to really focus on. And we're in a very privileged place as a County Council Fire and Rescue Service because we work so closely with other colleagues. It will be about the relationships with adult social care, with public health, with invariably Warwickshire Police. Much of this can be driven through the Safer Warwickshire Partnership Board, I feel as well. We can start to look at nuanced performance through that group as well. But it will very much fit in and around that kind of working for me.
Thank you, Kieran. Okay. Dave, is that satisfactory for you?
Yeah, Adrian, it's astounding, and the plans and the proposals and the discussions that are going on at a local and national level are first class, so good luck and more power to everybody.
Thank you. I'm having connectivity issues here. I've just got Maggie showing with a question now, but if I disappear, I do apologise because I lost the screen there altogether. Councillor O'Rourke.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'd add to what everybody else has said. The sort of the value that you add in terms of the sort of well-being and public health agenda is great. And I'd sort of say, well, you know, actually, with all of this is how we measure that in terms of adding value. And I think that's really important that we keep an eye on it, because we've been asked about earlier by Dave about these sort of the resource implications, and you do such a fantastic job, but what does that mean? So to me, if we're sort of preventing rather than curing, and we're saving rather than losing, we need to be able to quantify that to the accountants always. So I'd be interested in terms of how you can actually measure how you add value with that, which I know that you do. And I would like to say thank you to you and all of other people in your service for the fantastic job you do. I mean, the wellbeing stuff is very close to my heart anyway, which you probably know, and I have done everything I can to make sure that we work in partnership in health and with your services as well. So we talk about measuring values, which is really important. There's a couple of other things, I suppose. One, what are the challenges for us in the future? Because things are changing, they're never going to be the same again after COVID. So what does that mean? And what are you looking at in terms of the future and how the service might look? And the other thing is, and I'm not quite sure about this really, but I am, with COVID and everything that's going on at the moment, and there's so much logistical stuff going on and stuff that we end up having to manage locally because we have that operational experience. I do have a bit of a concern over something that we're not managing, but wondered whether you've got any thoughts on it or if you've been asked to support at all. So I'm asking out of genuine curiosity, not to catch people out. I have a concern that we're setting up all these vaccination centres to mass vaccinations, which is absolutely fantastic news. And I'm also hearing that if we don't get all of those vaccines out within the 3.5 days, and there's a high percentage left, that we could lose those vaccination centres. And I'm really, 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 truly concerned about how we're going to get people to some of these places, because they're in very built up areas. People haven't got the mobility. They're not on bus routes, some of them, and there's a lack of parking space. Now, I know it's not our problem. It is our problem, but I just wonder, in terms of working collectively and strategically and supporting one another, whether you'd been approached in terms of how services, if they got any capacity at all, might help support, delivering sort of patients to get their vaccination that might not have a car and might not. It's a bit like going to the hospital, isn't it? But it's going to a vaccination centre. Sorry, I've rambled on a bit, but that's sorry. Thank you.
Right. We'll let Barnaby and Andy pick the pieces up out of that, and Kieran and come back with some answers on that.
Shall I cover measuring and maybe challenges while Kieran composes an answer on vaccination and the like, perhaps? So measurement, how we measure the success of these is long-term output. So as an example, we began what were then known as home fire safety checks 25 years ago, I think, something like that, in Camp Hill and Nuneaton. And at that point, it was a hunch. We thought it would work, but it probably took a good decade, if not 2 decades, before we were sure it was working. We began really serious road traffic collision education about 10 years ago. We're just seeing the benefits in the 17 to 25-year-old cadre now. The sort of stuff that Councillor Redford was talking about, the youth activity, the Better the Heart Shield programme, we may begin to see an output in slightly less paediatric admissions and eventually in less other hospital admissions, but that measurement might be literally decades in the making for some of them. But long-term, broader outputs than just the kind of fire-related outputs that we're looking at in this report, if that's an acceptable answer. Challenges. Goodness, that's the question. So there's a generic response here about that we try to gather all of these within our integrated risk management plan, which looks ahead and tries to establish this. But off the top of my head, modernised, retrofitted or newly built, highly insulated building stock is a challenge to firefighters. Electrification of vehicles and other assets, hydrogen-powered vehicles. Aging demographic, I could probably go on and on and on, but there's a whole list of things there. Yeah.
So I offer a position on that as well.
Absolutely. And I was just going to finish saying, we address it by having a more agile workforce, a more flexible workforce, really, really good technical and practical training against a background of reducing or hopefully still reducing operational activity, reaching some real wood to touch. Over to you, Kieran.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Again, I've been in quite a lot of conversation, both in the National Fire Chiefs Council and the Home Office, about the monetisation of prevention performance. And it's linked to output, yes, but it's more linked to outcomes. And then we get really good performance data, qualitative as well as quantitative, on our performance, often contributing towards the broader agenda. So these kind of systems approaches to the big societal challenges. Definitely, I see those challenges being climate, economy, and levelling up. And Professor Sir Michael Marmot's report is something that's almost become a Bible for me, because I think it does show a way in which we, as local authorities, can start to address some of these issues. And again, I would suggest that we are in a great position in Warwickshire, because we're a county council fire and rescue service in a very good county council that works well with all its partners, and should that change to some other unitary authority, I still feel that that will work for us going forwards. I know that Nigel Minn's teams are working very much on the kind of big health adult social care challenges in a systems way. We're doing so much work with Becky Hale in commissioned work. That's where Hospital to Home came from, really, and also working with the CCG. So I think that they would be my big challenges: the economy, levelling up, and the climate. And I think fire can play its part in all of those areas. On the vaccination question, I think it's a great question. So the fire team has restructured itself in the last month or so to release officers into the team that are doing some of the work around the mass lateral flow testing, and certainly a great team there anyway, and working with Sade, of course, to support Sade through her endeavours. But I know that talking to Dave Pemberton and Steve Langer, Keith McDermott, etc., who've been heavily involved in that work, there are opportunities for us to, again, flex our service to, rather than do hospital to home, it'll be home to hospital and home again. And there are opportunities to use that service to get people to some of the test centres. Equally, we've got command units that we did offer up that might form part of a sort of logistical arrangements to get facilities into more rural communities, or the potential for us transporting people to some of the test centres, because it's vital we get particularly the over 80s, over 60s to those vaccination centres and get them vaccinated to try and drive down the rate of infection. So that would be my take on those questions, and I'm sure there's many more.
Thank you, Kieran. Okay, the last word on this goes to the portfolio holder, Councillor Crump.
I will be brief. Just like to say, just imagine how great Warwickshire Fire and Rescue would be if Mr. Amos had a decent portfolio holder. But yeah, but they're doing a great job despite that. Despite it, so yeah, great. I think one of the issues will be station locations, but that's a perennial problem. But yeah, again, without great big networks and transport nodes, especially there for Councillor Felt, it's a challenge. But I think we are getting there. And again, Councillor Bode referred to a great social media presence, and we are certainly getting the message out. And we've got really strong advocates here. Again, Councillor Bode, Councillor O'Rourke, Councillor Redford, and obviously Richard Chataway was an exemplar in representing Warwickshire Fire and Rescue. So again, I think if we can get the message out still, and we can never have too much communication of what we're doing. It's almost like the Monty Python sketch, what did the Romans do for us? In this case, what does Warwickshire Fire and Rescue do for us? And it's a flipping lot. I have to be careful always here, but flipping lot, I think it's quite a good one. The point about education is working as well, working with the Strategic Road Safety Partnership and the Peace and Crime Commissioner, and that's coming to fruition. It is encouraging that our 16 to 25s are benefited from this, and the education has worked. And like Councillor Warwick, in 15, 20 years' time, when I become a middle-aged man, I'll hopefully benefit from that too. But yeah, great work's being done. If we can all pass the messages out, that would be great. And look forward to again a safe and hopefully happy and safe and prosperous Christmas and New Year. So stay safe, everybody. I've got to go to another meeting in a minute, and thank you, everybody, for all that hard work and support of Warwickshire Fire and Rescue.
Thank you very much, Andy. Okay, right, we're going to move on to the final agenda item now, which is item number 8, and a topic dear to my heart this afternoon, internet connectivity.
Good afternoon, everyone. So firstly, I ought to start just by introducing myself. For those of you that have not had the chance to meet me yet, my name's Peter Wren. I am the new Digital and ICT Service Manager. Having not met me is the fact that since I joined in July, I have always worked remotely. And so whilst I've met many of my colleagues, the chance to meet them in person still eludes me, and I look forward to that opportunity. However, you'll be glad to know that this afternoon I will be letting my esteemed colleague John Parmenter walk you through the document as he has been running this project for many, many months. And so, John, I think it's over to you to walk us through an update on the superfast broadband project and future digital connectivity.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, members. I hope the paper is relatively self-explanatory, and it falls into two parts. First of all, the Coventry, Solihull and Warwickshire broadband project started over 10 years ago. And at that time, our target was to get superfast connectivity to 95% of the premises in Warwickshire. And at that time, superfast meant above 24 megabits per second. I'm pleased to say that we are at 98-99% superfast connectivity. But of course, the only thing I'm absolutely sure of is the accelerating pace of change. And by that, 24 megabits for a lot of people is insufficient. And the new target is gigabit speeds, which is 1,000 megabits per second. And of course, the lockdown, working from home, when you've got teenagers streaming music and film, and you're trying to do your day job as well, that puts extra strain on the system. And I understand that for many people, connectivity has become, if you like, the fourth utility. It is an essential part of our life. And we are moving forward. I am pleased to say that we continue to work with our partner Openreach to deliver fibre now out into our communities. And we will not complete phase 3 of what we call the Superfast programme for another year or so. There have been delays, and the COVID system has put a further delay into the system. I am pleased to say that very recently we managed to get a grant of £5.7 million to connect up our public sector buildings, including our fire and rescue sites as well. So very shortly, all of our schools, all of our public buildings should be connected at gigabit speeds. The next phase is to make sure we can roll out fibre across to everybody. Fibre means that we've still got an awful lot of work to do. And whilst we're at 99% superfast, unfortunately, at fibre, we're only around 18%. And our target is to get to 50% by 2025 and 90% by 2030. There is investment coming through, and the government have got an outside-in programme which will launch in a year or two's time, and I'm hoping that we will get 15 to 20 million pounds to get out into our more rural areas. In the meantime, I am delighted to say that Warwickshire's just acknowledged and accepted a new digital infrastructure policy and has created a digital connectivity board, which Councillor Cam Call is going to lead and has become the digital ambassador for Warwickshire. And I'm delighted that she continues to support our efforts in CSW to get better connectivity for everyone. What we're also acknowledging is that we need to look at mobile connectivity, not only 4G, but now 5G as it starts to impact on our lives. And you'll be pleased to know that Ofcom and the government are forcing our mobile network operators to improve the shared rural network across the country, so that 95% of the landmass of Britain will have good 4G connectivity. I'm pushing to get 5G, and I hope people will be delighted to hear that Stratford and Leamington Spa will get 5G connectivity, if not by the end of this year, early into next year. And that will form the basis, and we will move 5G out hopefully into Nuneaton and into Rugby. We are actively working with suppliers to try to accelerate this connectivity. So we've still got a long way to go. The government continue to support local authorities to get this connectivity in. And I have to say that I am pleased to say that the government, BDUK, chose Warwickshire as one of 8 local authorities to be the pilot for the outside-in gigabit programme, which hopefully puts us first in line to get this funding. And there is a strategy now how we are going to be supporting our businesses and our residents. And I'll finish off by saying we are investigating the use of mobile connectivity to replace the, if you like, the fibre to the cabinet connectivity that some of our premises in the most rural areas are having to struggle with at this minute in time. And we have plans to support both businesses and residents in the next year. I think I'm going to stop there, but I'm more than happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much indeed for that report. It is very, very welcome. Internet connectivity has never been more important than it is during this COVID crisis. Can I ask, are there any questions from the committee? No? Wonderful. Okay. Oh, no, I've had two indicated. Parminder.
Thank you, Chair. I thought there got to be a question. Thank you for that update. Seems to be that limiting factor in the gigabit delivery is the full fiber network. Sorry, I didn't have my mic down. It seems to be the limiting factor is in the gigabit delivery is the full fiber network. And whilst I can appreciate there's difficulty in the rural areas, at what sort of percentage are we in the urban areas with the full fiber network? And the second related question is, in the new builds, it just beats me, why isn't every new build area fibre ready?
Very good question on the new build fibre ready, and there are requirements in place that any new builder has to connect with fibre, certainly to approach suppliers to get connectivity in, but it isn't a legal requirement at this time. Openreach will put fibre into an area, but there are many new sites that have just come on, which unfortunately have relied on the old-fashioned copper connectivity, and that's a lost opportunity, dare I say.
Thank you very much. Does that satisfy you, Parminder?
Yeah, so the first question was, in the urban areas, what sort of percentage are we at with the full fibre network delivery?
I'm afraid I couldn't differentiate between urban and rural. I can only give you a total figure. But what I can say, without going into too much technical difficulty, we also have Virgin Media supplying many of our urban areas. I think there's a fair network in Nuneaton, in Leamington. I think even in Stratford there is an amount of Virgin fibre. Amount of Virgin connectivity. Most of it is old-fashioned, coaxial, hybrid cable. And for most applications, it's fine, particularly for television. We can, or Virgin can, use a process called DOCSIS 3.1, which is Data over Cable Service Interface Specification. And therefore, if you've got hybrid cable, you can actually buy gigabit connectivity. It's not fibre, but you can get gigabit connectivity. In some instances, Virgin do fibre, but Virgin fibre is very, very limited. The fibre that we're putting in as part of our Superfast programme, so Contract 3, for instance, is entirely fibre to the premise. But what I will do, Councillor Birdie, is see if I can dig out the figures for you to see if it helps understand. But the majority of our fibre will be in the urban area.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, because in the report it keeps saying it's low percentage because of the urban, the rural areas.
The rural
So I'm
areas,
just, yeah. So I was thinking, if that rural areas are the problem, what sort of percentage of? So fine, yeah, I accept that, and I look forward to getting the information from you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Parminder. Right, Sarah, you've indicated, Councillor Bode.
Yeah, I just wanted to say well done. I've been looking at reports on this for years, and I noticed 2010 is the date that's in the report. I mean, obviously we've been working on this for a very, very long time, and obviously it's a thing, a game of diminishing returns, isn't it? You know, you can do a huge percentage very quickly, and then those last few properties, down long drives or when in the middle of nowhere, are increasingly expensive and difficult to get at. I was pleased to see the comments in here about mobile connectivity. That's something I've raised in the past. But it does seem to me there must be properties where it's actually much easier to try and provide a mobile solution as long as it's consistent and reliable, rather than trying to put in cable, where the costs per property must be, in some of the more rural parts of Warwickshire, must be absolutely astronomical. But it's really, really good to see. I mean, I take your point at the beginning about the demand on these services. Even 5 years ago, I don't think anybody could possibly have seen the demand that there would be for all this broadband. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My response is the fact that I think we are changing our strategy to incorporate more and more mobile anyway, because it is a most cost effective and a speedier way of getting those connections in. But I'll finish off by saying that my desk is not littered by letters from people in the countryside saying, great, I've got great connectivity. The only people who write to me are the people who have got really poor connectivity. So it is a rate of diminishing returns. But I think the whole committee in the Warwickshire County Council should take credit for the fact that for the last 10 years, universally, you have shown support in putting funding and resources into getting connectivity. You realised that connectivity was going to be important, and you've redoubled your efforts now because it's going to be part of our recovery plan into the future. So actually, I'd like to thank particularly Cam for supporting us on this journey, and in 10 years' time, we'll be in an even better place.
Thank you very much. I've had two more indicate they wish to speak, and again, can I encourage brevity on this? Alan, Councillor Webb.
Thanks very much, Adrian. Yeah, it did occur to me in your answer, John, to the question about new developments having connectivity as a prerequisite, effective connectivity, and you were with regret forced to tell us that yes, it's encouraged, but there is no backbone to it. There is no requirement to do it. I'm just wondering whether we as a committee via here to us as an authority can actually make those sorts of comments specifically perhaps to the government, who are at the moment looking at revising heavily the way the planning process is working, and see if this could actually be taken on board, because it is very, very critical. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that's an excellent suggestion. I can say that for the last 10 years, there has been a partnership working group with Warwickshire County Council and the 5 districts and boroughs, and we have incorporated in the 5 districts and boroughs in their planning a requirement that they should encourage connectivity. The government haven't legislated for it at this minute in time. So any extra impetus you can put into the government to make sure it is a requirement, I think would be very well met.
Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. You know what we've got to do, Adrian. Okay, thanks.
I think Sarah's got a follow up on that.
Yeah, Councillor, it wasn't trying to dampen your enthusiasm for making representations to government, but I'm not sure it's for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee in terms of the remit of its authority to do that. So it would need to be considered by officers and wrapped into the most appropriate way of considering that in the round, rather than something directly from this committee.
Point taken. Thank you, Sarah.
Okay. And last speaker on this, Councillor Riley, Dave.
Thanks, Adrian. I know fantastic proposals, and yes, we need to be right at the cutting edge of developing technologies, don't we, without any doubt. The question is just about areas where there are currently no mobile phone signals. Is there a strategy around these locations, or is the expectation that technology is progressing so quickly at some point they'll be picked up by modern technology?
Fantastic question, which I could go on for hours. Can I respond by saying we have recently commissioned a company called Umlaut, who have gone throughout Warwickshire actually testing the connectivity for the 4 main providers. So I can provide you with a heat map of the hotspots and the not spots. And we will now work with government, BDUK and Ofcom to make sure that the shared rural network I mentioned, which is a requirement for the mobile network operators to improve their connectivity, we will make sure that we can use our information to make sure that our not spots become good spots. We don't have many hotspots at this minute. Hotspots means there is such a mass of people that it just floods the network. But we will continue to push. And as you suggested, it is our more rural areas where we have the not spots. So we will be redoubling our efforts to make sure that the mobile network operators do give good 4G coverage.
Thank you. I think we'd all appreciate it. Yeah, if we could have that information, if it could go out to all members of the council, actually, because I think all councillors would be interested in that information. Okay, that's wonderful. Well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for that report. That was very informative and great to bring it back before this committee, because it's an essential item at the moment, internet connection in the world we're in. So thank you so much for that report.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any urgent business? I haven't been notified of any. So that brings us on to moving into the exempt part. Before we move into the exempt part of the meeting, can I thank all of you for your support during this year, particularly John, who looks after me so well with this committee, and the portfolio holders, all of our officers, for our fire service. It's been a hell of a year for all of us, hasn't it? It really has. We've lost some really good people this year, but let's hope we can move into the Christmas and the New Year period in a much more positive manner, and that a vaccine is going to do the job for us and we can get ourselves out of this awful position. So thank you to all of you for your support and your help, and for making this a lot less painful than it could have been. So thank you. And what I'd like to do now is move the resolution as printed, that members of the public be excluded from the meeting for items mentioned below on the grounds that their presence would involve the disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A of Part 1 of the Local Government Act 1972. Is it everyone's agreement that we do that?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay. I am going to propose...